Welcome to Old Classic Car. Just a short update on things going on here at OCTHQ. You may notice that the Morris has moved. There was a bench there before, but that's now over here, and the Morris is here because I thought it's a lot easier to get to it there. But the main subject of the video today is in fact little Dodge over there. As you may remember, it had a bit of a failure to proceed moment when we tried to put it away after the recent excursion to a classic car meeting. So I thought I'd best have a look and just see what's going on under the bonnet of this one. So let's go under the bonnet of this one and have a look, see what's happening. So as you might remember, if you saw the previous video, it conked out when we tried to bring it back into the garage and it would not start again for love nor money. So the first thing I did was whiz the top of the carburettor off again. Now last time I did this, when I had a problem, the carburettor was full of fuel, but this time it was bone dry, and that suggested to me that we may have a different problem going on. So I took out the main jet which is in there and blew that through, and also the passage that it feeds into. Checked the needle valve which is in here. This is an aftermarket filter on the inlet side of the carburettor, and I had a quick look in there and that appears to be clear, but I will be revisiting that because I'm not quite sure if I'm going to be keeping that. I also disconnected, because down here, if I can move my light, down there is where the fuel pump normally is, and that is the feed, that pipe there, if you can just see that, that is the feed in to the fuel pump from the tank. So I thought it makes sense just to sort of work my way back from the carburettor to make sure there are no blockages. So the first thing I did was grab a piece of tube, which is over there somewhere, and blew through this, and you could hear the fuel bubbling away in the tank, so that kind of suggested it was clear. What I also did is get the compressor with the airline attachment on it, because that's what was fitted. I put it in the tank, sealed it with a rag, and just put a bit of pressure in the tank there to make sure that the fuel was blowing through to the front, which it was. Fuel came out of the pipe at the other end once I pressured this for a few seconds of the airline. So that at least tells me, there's a bit of tube I used, but that at least tells me that the line to the tank, which is new, it's a new fuel tank, is clear. So that really left only one other thing, because the pipe from here to the pump was clear. I checked that one out, so that's okay. So I thought the next thing I'll do is take off the fuel pump. It looks like a very new fuel pump, and I've got that over on the bench. So let's go over to the bench and just have a quick shufty at that. I was really quite surprised to notice, actually, I was looking at the old analytics for the YouTube channel, and 86% of the people who watch these videos aren't subscribed. So if you found this video interesting enough to watch, and you've seen maybe some of the other uploads that have put up in more recent weeks, and it's your kind of thing, if you find these sort of old car videos of interest, tinkering, going to shows and so on, please think about subscribing, because it really does help the channel. Right, so here is the fuel pump, and as you can see, it looks pretty much brand new. This must be a new, or fairly new, reproduction, because it doesn't mention AC on it anyway. It would have been an AC pump originally, but it all looks fairly new to me. Now, the first thing I noticed as soon as I took it off, this is the operating arm, and it was just flopping all out. It wasn't doing a thing. So clearly there was a major problem there. Whether that's the only problem I've got, I'm not quite sure, but clearly this just flopping around and not pumping anything was never going to work very well. Now, if you've got a long memory, go back a couple of months or so, you'll remember that the oldie Standard 8 conked out last year when we went to a bit of a run. It conked out on the way there, and we had to abandon it in the farmyard and tow it back later in the day. And the problem with that one turned out to be a iffy, fairly rubbish, poor quality reproduction fuel pump. I'm not quite sure what make it was, it didn't say on it. A bit like this one doesn't say either. So on the Standard I ended up making up a replacement pump from 3 oldie worldy AC pumps that I just happened to have in a box. I made a good one up out of the 3, and that's what's running on the car now. Now this had exactly the same issue. The Standard was the same, and the Dodge has done the same thing again. This was just flopping all over the place, so clearly something was awry inside the pump itself. Now, if you've ever had one of the AC pumps apart, like the Standard has and the A40, the very common pumps on British cars, you'll know that this is a rubber diaphragm, this dark thing here, and it sort of fits to a disc of metal, and there's an operating rod which goes down and locks into this. So as this pumps up and down, it actuates this diaphragm which goes up and down, and that creates a suction that pulls the fuel up from the tank and pumps it up into the carburettor. And that is what went wrong with the standard. And as soon as I took the top off the standard fuel pump, everything just flew out. It wasn't locked down, it had been assembled incorrectly. Now this one works in a similar principle but is held together differently, but again, as soon as I took this off, the spring underneath the diaphragm here, it just all pinged out. So clearly it wasn't locked down, and this was just flopping around doing nothing at all. Now on the standard fuel pump, the diaphragm with the metal rod, the actuating rod, it goes down and then you twist it through several degrees, I can't remember what, 90 degrees, and then you screw it down, blah blah blah, and off you go. This one attaches, the rod attaches into the other end of this slightly differently. You have to sort of hook it in, and it's not a very satisfactory arrangement at all. It's not very good at all. But they had come apart inside, so this was flopping around, but it wasn't actuating the diaphragm here, so there was no pumping, nothing to draw the fuel up from the tank and pump it up to the carburettor. So clearly that was the problem. So yesterday evening I removed all these screws, you can ignore that, and removed the screws, took it apart, and I was able to re-put it back together, reconnect the linkage from here to the rod that comes off the bottom of the diaphragm here, and then it seems to work now. So whereas before this flopped around and did nothing, if I do it manually, you should be able to hear what's going on. So we've got a real good suction. There's the inlet where it says in. Obviously that connects to the fuel tank itself, and this goes up and away into the carburettor. And now we've got a really good suction sound. Now why this disconnected inside, I'm not quite sure. I don't have much faith in these reproduction pumps, I must admit. I don't think they're very good at all. I mean, there's no age to this at all. I'm assuming this was put on during the recommissioning that's taken place on and off over the last few years. So if this has done 100 miles, I'd be surprised. And already it had fallen apart inside. Now whether it hadn't been assembled correctly at the factory, I really don't know. But it doesn't give you great confidence that these are going to be reliable. Now, from memory, somewhere I have an AC pump in the pile of parts which are blocked in behind the anglia in that shelving over there. I think there is an AC pump, because I bought an AC pump when Big Dodge was being restored all those years ago, about 12 years ago, but it didn't fit the engine on that because it's a much bigger engine, and I've got a feeling that's still around somewhere, and it's an AC pump, and I'm fairly sure it's a similar layout to this one, where you've got the actuating arm here, diaphragm here, and there's the glass, still got fuel in it, and that just goes underneath this piece here. That's the filter, a little bowl there with the fuel in it, and there's the gauze on the top which does some filtering. So the plan is I'm going to put this back on because it seems to work now, and hopefully the truck will start up. I'm not entirely sure, but at least this should work now, whereas it didn't work at all before. And then when that's done, I can run them up, move them out of the way, and have a look in this cupboard over here, because this is where the Big Dodge parts are, but I can't get at them because the anglia is in the way. So to move the anglia, I have to move this little Renault. So I think the priority really is just to put this pump back on. Hopefully it'll start, and then I can move things around and find this other AC pump, in which case I will put that in the back of the truck and keep it as a spare, maybe even fit it. If this proves problematic, then this will become the spare, and I will fit that AC pump when I find it, if it is the correct one. But I thought I'd just give a bit of an update, because it was, the other video ended with a minor failure. I don't like to leave failures hanging around for too long on the channel, it's all quite dispiriting. So as the weather's really nice and warm, I thought I'll get out here yesterday evening and have a bit of a tinker, and that's what I did, and that's when I found the problem with this particular fuel pump. Here's that other seat that I mentioned for the A40. That's the original one there, where the frame underneath has rotted all away. And this apparently came out of a car that had been sat in a scrapyard for 30 years. And even though the covering's not bad, but obviously it's the wrong colour. So the idea is, when the weather's warmer and this is all a bit more pliable, or rather this is a bit more pliable and softer to work with, I will take this covering off here, which will reveal the very nice sprung frame in there. Take this off, the remains of its original frame, and swap it onto here, and hopefully, if everything goes to plan, that'll mean we have a good seat squab with the original material to go back in this. So it's just another one of those little jobs to tick off. Clearly there are plenty more, but at least that's something else sourced that there's been bugging me for a little while, because I knew this seat wasn't recoverable, reusable, because it's all rotten it's terribly rotten under there. It's not good at all, but the covering's okay. The covering will be reusable, just needs a bit of a clean up and so on. But that was a good find. While I was having a bit of a tidy up and moving the bench from there to there, and the Morris from there to there, I rediscovered, well, I hadn't rediscovered it, but I dug out this old inspection lamp which I retrieved from a garage years and years ago. The garage was going to be cleared for redevelopment, and I saw this in the corner, and I thought, I've got to retrieve that. I've never seen one of these before. So clearly it's an inspection lamp, so you can see where the bulb would go in there. It's probably 1930s in date, and it's all adjustable. You can tilt it, angle it, and do whatever you want with it. But this is not just an inspection lamp. This is a really clever thing. Because if we work our way down here, you'll see there are 3 feet. There's a fixed one going that way, and this one hinges. So this one folds out of the way. And in fact, it's got some writing on there, the FEW multi-lamp Model B. And there is a caster, or rather the remains of a caster. There should be another one over there. And there is a caster mounted on here. And what that enables you to do, most of the time obviously, you'd have it standing up like this, shining under the bonnet of a nice little 30s car such as the Morris. But if you need to work underneath a car, what you do, you fold that out of the way, and the whole thing can lie on its back, and it sits on these casters. So you've got one there, and one over there. So while you go underneath, you might have like one of those crawlers that you lie on to slide underneath the car when it's up on jacks to work on, up on stands, and a bit like the A40 here. So if you wanted to work on the A40 and you needed a bit of light, this, you could simply lie on its back, sit on the casters, and it would slide underneath the car. What a clever thing that is. And then when you're finished, you just stand it up again, whiz the 3rd foot out there for stability. You're back to having a standard inspection lamp. But what a clever bit of kit that is. I did find somewhere the original advert for it, but that was going to be thrown away. It was going to be cleared away. So I did find another caster which may do the job for down there, because one of them's broken, but it's still got all the old cabling on it, so I don't think we'll be firing it up anytime soon. It needs rewiring. But I just thought it was a really cool thing, and when I saw it there, I thought, I've got to dig it out and put it on display with the little Morris, because that's just the perfect accessory. The whole idea in here was to dress the garage up with old clutter, in the way of how a workshop would have been back in, say, the 1930s or 1950s perhaps, something like that. So while it's not packed with really expensive enamel signs and petrol pumps and lovely illuminated globes which cost thousands of pounds at a time, I tended to just look out for interesting little things that just cost a couple of pounds a time, just to decorate the place, relatively inexpensively, and over the last 30 years or so. And this, when I saw it, and I heard that the whole place was going to be cleared and everything be skipped, I thought, I've got to rescue that. So I bought that and various other goodies as well. That was a few years ago, mind, so it's not a recent find, but it's been hidden behind Big Dodge for years, so I thought it deserves to come out and be seen once again. And it's nice to see the Morris a bit more accessible as well. So the plan this year, once I've got the Dodge running properly and just keep maintaining and keep on top of the other stuff which is technically in use, is to sort of concentrate on these two. That's the plan anyway. But more immediate than that, more pressing than that, is I think I will piece this back together, put it back on the truck and see how we go. Anyway, there we go. Just a quick update on matters Dodge and why it wouldn't start the other day. Another issue with a poorly made reproduction petrol pump by the look of it. Where have I heard that before? Anyway, thanks very much for watching. More news and more videos along very, very soon. So bye for now. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. Is the bowl back on? if you haven't already seen it, please check out Harley's channel, Car Traction, all one word. His most recent upload is footage of various cars testing at Alton Park over 3 different dates, including this fantastic Lotus Cortina. So please make your way over there when you're finished here. Please consider also subbing to his channel, because it really helps him, it keeps him going, because I know he enjoys doing this kind of thing, and the feedback from you guys and the increasing subscriptions and likes and so on really means a great deal to him. So please check that out before you disappear altogether. Anyway, thanks again.